And a great day to everybody. Thanks for joining me here. This is the Keith Barker channel. We're going to focus today. I'm having a lot of fun. I got to admit, I'm having a lot of fun with Kali Linux. I used Kali Linux before it was called Kali. It was called Backtrack years ago, and it's a fantastic tool. And so our objective in this video, and this is going to be a few of these videos regarding Kali Linux and a Raspberry Pi, because this is a fantastic tool. If you're working on CCNA, is a great way to help rehearse and practice with the technologies and the methods. And also, if you want to get into some penetration testing and vulnerability assessment, it's a great way to do that too. Now, as a starting point for all of these videos that involve, where is it? Here it is, Kali Pi. If you're running Kali Linux, do not run Kali Linux on any network that is not your own, or you do not have permission to do any of the things Kali Linux can do, including network scans or anything else, because those could be, as I've heard in the past, those could be resume producing events where you get fired because you're using hacking tools or tools that you shouldn't on the network. So our objective here isn't for hacking specifically. It is for educational purposes in getting a device like this, like a Kali Pi, on our networks. If you have a home network, this is fantastic. Check this out. Let me show you. If we have, dang, and here we have once more, like I dialed everything in except for my pen. Let me bring up my pen. And I get a lot of questions on what pen do you use. I use Epic Pen. Epic Pen is really, really inexpensive, and it writes on top of virtually everything. So like web pages or whatever, if you're teaching, it's a great tool. All right, so here is Epic Pen. Let's imagine that we have a network that we're putting together or working with, and we're thinking, man, we're running OSPF. Look how big that is. I'm gonna make that a little smaller. We're running OSPF, and we're running, let's see, CDP. What would we find on these links? What else might we find? We might find IP packets for protocols that are being forwarded, like IP packets being sent from the user at PC7 to the user at PC8. We also might see negotiations with, if we have trunk links, like for example, between a router and a switch, we might have 802.1q. Other things that we might see on the network would be ARP. ARP is when like a device like PC7 says, oh, I know who my default gateway is, but I don't know the layer 2 address. We can see an ARP message there, and a boatload of other traffic. Wouldn't it be cool? And I'm going to say, spoiler alert, yes, it is very cool to be able to take a device like this, the Raspberry Pi, and insert it in between these two devices and eavesdrop on all the traffic. So hackers are going to be doing that for the benefit of hacking, but what I think is really cool is if we could take this device and configure it and then place it in line between switches and routers, or just drop it in and then have remote access to it, so we can just log in and boom, have it there on our own computer. We could be sitting here at a PC or over here, and then we could reach that device wherever it is. So I have a couple options for doing that. Now, before I get way ahead of myself, there are several things that have to be done to get that working. And so I'm going to introduce those as we go through it together. But the end picture is have a Raspberry Pi. You plug it into the network with the assistance of either a device like this, which is really affordable, and we'll take a look at this in a subsequent video, or even more affordable, something like this. This is like 12 bucks, and we can eavesdrop on all the traffic going back and forth between two network devices and analyze the traffic with a protocol capture application such as Wireshark. Wireshark being free. So what I'd like to do is, in this video, I'd like to share with you step by step, and this was not easy. I thought, oh, it's gonna bump, bump, bump. There are like 11 billion ways this does not work. And so what I'm gonna do in this video is share with you in just a few minutes, and I'll add timestamps below. I'd like to walk you through how to take the Raspberry Pi, give you exactly all the URLs that I'm gonna use. They're in the description below, and all the commands I'm gonna use in the description below, so you can take a lot of the guesswork out. So if you follow the exact steps I'm showing you, you'll have very likely very, very similar results. So starting off, the ingredients list. This is a Raspberry Pi. I got this really fun little case. You don't need the case. I also bought a little fan and a heat sink kit. You don't need those either. But this is a Raspberry Pi version 3B+. Like, didn't quite get an A. Nope. B+, 3B+. So there's also a Raspberry Pi 4, and there's also an older version of a Raspberry Pi, which I thought was really close. Anyway, it'll also work on older versions of Raspberry Pis. But if you want to have the exact same results, I'm just showing you all the details of what I'm going to be using. So I've got a Raspberry Pi. Also, it helps if you have a keyboard and mouse that you can plug in for initially. But I thought, you know what if somebody has a Raspberry Pi and they have an SD card, which is another important aspect. I'll show you that too. So I've got a little, the Raspberry Pi 3B+ uses a little micro SD card, which I don't know if the focus is going to work on that or not. Okay. Oh, there, almost. There we go. So it's a Samsung It's a 32 gig micro SD card. You don't need an SD card that big, but having at least 8 gigs would be good. The more the merrier, the more stuff you can store on it. So I've got this. You don't need the case. I've got the micro SD card, and I've also got the appropriate cable. So for the Pi 3B Plus, it uses like the little mini or the micro USB connector here, which is pretty standard, and that's how it gets its power. So starting off, I've got the cable, and I've got a power cable for this. I've got the memory. Oh my gosh, I just dropped the memory card. This is going to be a very short demo without this is like the hard disk for this guy. And I'd like to walk you through how to go ahead and get the image for Kali Pi, which is Kali Linux running on the Raspberry Pi, and flash this. I'm going to show you the software exactly that you can use to be safe doing it, and then also how to boot it up and start it, even if you want to do it headless. And you might say, well, Keith, what does that mean, headless? Well, if you don't have a keyboard and mouse that you can plug in, and a video, like this is an HDMI connector for out. If you don't have all those things, you just have the Raspberry Pi, you don't want to switch your gear all over, and you don't have an extra monitor and keyboard, I'm going to walk you through how you can do it without any keyboard or mouse or monitor. So you just start with headless, and then we'll get remote access. Yeah, all right, so that's quite a bit. Let me share with you starting off. Let's start off by flashing this device right here. This is the micro SD card. So the older versions have a slightly larger SD card, so whatever SD card suits your particular model of Pi, you'd want to get that. Also, I have an adapter like this. This plugs into my USB port on my computer, and it's got slots for an SD and a micro SD card. And what we're going to do is we're going to download the image from Offensive Security. That's who makes the Kali flavor. And then we'll go ahead and we'll flash it onto this to create a brand new, logically, a hard drive for this Kali Pi. So I'm trying to think what would be the most effective use of time. Let me show you the download, the flashing process, and then while that's happening real time, because I just turned on record, this is gonna keep going until we actually have this up and remote access to it with a GUI. It's gonna be fantastic. So let me go ahead and start the flash, and then I'll walk you through where to get that software, and again, all the details are gonna be in the description below. All right, so let me give you a screen, and let's bring up this tool, which I thought I had open, but I guess I do not. So it is Balena Etcher is the actual flash tool, and here it is real quick. Just make sure you can see that. I'll put my face in there for a little added variety. Okay, so basically, this is important too. So Balena Etcher, I'll give you the URL here in a moment once we start the flash. I've already downloaded the image. I'll show you that here in a moment too, but while we take the most use of our time, I've downloaded the image, and with Balena Etcher, you click on Select Image, and they're saying what image do you want to burn to that flash drive, or to that SD card. And I already downloaded it. I'll walk you through that here in a moment. So I'm going to click on, this is like a gig in size. So I'll simply select that, and it says select target. Now notice I have not, let's see if you see that, I have not plugged this in yet. It's important to make sure you're not going to flash some other USB attached device instead of your SD-ROM, your micro SD or your SD card. So see how it says select target, and it says no removable devices detected. I would recommend doing this first with the Etcher application, verify you have nothing there, then plug in your SD card into your reader, which I'm doing right now. And now this is a Windows message saying, hey, I need to format this drive to use it. I'm going to dismiss all the Windows messages, but check this out. Now it shows the 32 gig drive there. So if you have an 8 gig flash, it should show 8 gigs. If you have 16 gigs, etc. Windows maybe is thinking it's 2 or 3 partitions or what have you, but Balena Etcher knows the scoop. So if you can click on change if you want, but there's only one removable drive here, flash drive, easy for me to say. There's only one removable drive now, the one I just plugged in. That is the correct one, and with that, I'm going to click on flash. It's asking me, are you sure? I'm going to say yes, and away it goes. Now let's talk about where you get this, where you download the files, and also where you, the Balena Etcher, and also where you get the Kali Linux image. And I have those pre-queued up here in Edge. Here we go. A different browser, making sure we can see all the output. Fantastic. So this is the website, www.offensivesecurity.com, and then /Kali Linux ARM images. I will put that in the description. That way you can just take it, click, and go. And if you go to this landing page here, and we're going to scroll down, And this is right here on Raspberry Pi Foundation. And then we have Kali Linux here. So under Raspberry Pi Foundation, you'd want to grab the one for Kali Pi 2, 3, and 4. Or if you have an older version, it looks like this version right here, version 1.2. This version supports an older version. So if you have a 2, 3, or 4, you can go for this one. I downloaded that. It shows the size. It also has right here the SHA-256 sum, so you can actually verify that you're getting the actual image, not some hacked image. Although that's kind of funny, because this Kali Linux image, it isn't hacked, but it's loaded chock full with great utilities that a person could use for some ethical hacking. All right, so I've downloaded that. The second element would be the Etcher software. So this is the website, and it is www.balena.io/etcher. And to make sure there's no mistakes, I'll put that in the description below too. You can download it, run it, and that's what you're going to use. Take the image you downloaded from Offensive Security and flash it to the SD card, which, if we check on our progress, is still going strong. It's going to go to 50, it's going to go to 100%, and then it's going to verify it. During that time, Windows may pop up, and it may say, or if you're running on, it's also, they also make a version for Mac as well. So once it's done flashing, it'll verify it, and then once it's done, you can go ahead and remove it. Safely ejecting USB devices is always recommended, but if you just pull it out after it's done, it'd probably be okay too. One of the cool things about these little drives is that you can image this, go plug it into your Pi, play with it, make a whole bunch of changes, mess it up, destroy it, accidentally power it off in the middle or whatever, and just reflash it again, like starting from zero, starting from scratch, or fresh, clean slate once again. All right, so I've done this probably in preparation for this video 10 times at least, because the steps coming up to get remote access with a GUI to this Raspberry Pi, there's lots of ways it doesn't work and doesn't work well. So what I wanted to do was walk through it from soup to dessert, so we could do it in one take right here, and I could save you a lot of time and effort in getting it up and running. All right, so that's flashing, that's going. The other thing I'd recommend is Angry IP Scanner. Now, Angry IP Scanner is, you do not want to run this on a production network without permission. This is going to go out and scan the whole network. This is considered a security offense if you are on a production network and it's not yours and you don't have the authorization to do it. So here in my home lab, my home network, I'm going to be running this. And the reason I'm going to run this is because what's going to happen is I'm going to, after the flash finishes, I'm going to take the Raspberry Pi, I'm going to plug in that little SD card, I'm going to plug it into my wired network, give it power it up, and you just power it up by powering the USB cable to USB power source. And then once it boots up, it'll do DHCP. So if you're on CCNA, if you're studying for your CCNA, you're going to be, if you haven't already, familiar with DHCP, the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, where this device says, broadcast, looking for a DHCP server. And if there's a DHCP server present, which most networks have one, the DHCP server makes an offer. Yeah, I'm a DHCP server, or hey, I'm a DHCP server. Depends on the gender of the DHCP server, I suppose, or the voice quality of the DHCP server, either way. So it responds, and then the client, and the offer is given by the DHCP server. The client makes a request saying, I'll take it. And then there's a final acknowledgement that comes from the server. So all that happens on this image and this version of Kali Linux by default. Not all Kali Linux images are going to do that, by the way. So it depends on the flavor. So once it has an IP address, what we can do is we can then, if we're not going to plug in a monitor and a keyboard, we can just scan the network, identify we can scan the network first, see which devices are there, and then plug this in, give it about a minute to power up and get an IP address, and then scan again and find out what the new address is, and then check it out. We can bootstrap it by SSHing to it with a terminal emulation program like Putty, which is free. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go back to our screen, and let me run IP scan, or Angry IP, which I don't have open, but I'll open it up. Angry IP Scanner. There's a few different flavors of it. Any flavor you want will work. Also, as you download these apps, be aware that a hacker, if they maliciously modify a package, it could be installing something negative, malware, on your computer. So be sure to check the URLs where you're getting them from. Validate that nothing you're installing is going to harm your computer. That's all your responsibility, as it is with every computer owner. All right. Okay. We're going to scan my current network. Now, what is my current network? Let's take a look. I'm going to bring up a command prompt. And my question for you is, what command would we do to identify our current network? And there's a few options. One of them would be IP. On Windows, config. And with IP config, I've got several virtualized adapters, but here's my Ethernet adapter that I am using right here. So that's the one I'm using, and its IP address is 192.168.1.254, and the mask is 255.255.250. If you are just learning subnetting or IP addresses, take a look at the playlist called Subnet Saturday. It'll walk you through from soup to dessert with IP addresses. What this represents is that it's a 24-bit network. The network is 192.168.1. And so before I plug the Kali Linux box, the Kali Pi in, let's go ahead and do a scan. And we're going to do a scan just by 192.168.1.0. You just put the network address in at the beginning, and then you can put the high-end range here at the end, which is 255, and then the net mask. And there might be shortcuts to this as well, but this will definitely get the job done. Making sure my feedback monitor is good. Yep. All right, and start. Okay, now if a company has intrusion prevention systems, if you're at a corporate network, again, do not do this on a corporate network. Don't do this at the office, because if they have if they have IPS intrusion prevention systems or next generation firewall services that are looking for this type of attack or scan, they can easily trace it back to you. So again, just be careful not to violate any rules at a corporate environment. All right, so here's these IP addresses, and what I did also, I went to settings. This will help you. I went to settings, and I went to display, and I said, please just give me a list of only the hosts that responded instead of every possible host. Because then if you have 254 possible addresses, there are going to be a whole bunch that didn't hit. This just makes it easier to see. So I'm going to click on cancel. I didn't make any changes there. So I've got some devices. I've got some Elgato stuff. Some of these are my Apple TV. I've got a PlayStation in there somewhere. I also asked it to show me the MAC addresses. That's also an option in settings. So display, and I thought I said it. Display. Huh. Anyway, I believe somewhere I went in and I said, please show me the MAC addresses as well. In any event, the first 6 characters of these Ethernet addresses are assigned to a vendor. And so what this application did is said, oh, there's some that are assigned to Elgato and Habitat, which is a Internet of Things controller and so forth. And it's making its best guess on, well, I take it back. Now I see a host name here. It could be making a best guess based on the type of those 6 characters, or it could be looking at something else. It says host name. Very likely it's just looking at those. I take it back. Habitat.local. The only way we get that is by that device responding with that. All right. In any event, what we're going to do is take this list here, and after we plug in our device, we're going to compare it and see what's new. So I'm going to take a little screenshot of this. And you can do a print screen or whatever you do. I've got a little application called Snagit from TechSmith, which I love. I'm just going to grab that. Or you can just make a screenshot with any tool you want to, capture that. And there's the screenshot of before. Great. And now let's go ahead and plug in our device. So let me go back to this screen real quick. The flash is done. It's all verified. I'm going to pull it out. If you want to do a graceful release with the USB eject, that's not a bad idea either. And I'm just going to plug this into my Kali Linux. Sorry, it's not Kali Linux yet. It's just a Raspberry Pi. I'm going to plug this bad boy in. And I'm going to plug it in. Hey, so I'm plugging into Ethernet just on an available port, and I'm also going to go ahead and plug in a USB power supply to power this bad boy on. Almost there. There you go. The little red light comes on, and in about 30 seconds or so, maybe a minute or a minute and a half, it'll be powered up and ready to go. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to run this scan again, and we're going to see what additional MAC address or IP addresses show up. Now, another option for this is, while this boots up, is if you have a monitor and keyboard, you can and mouse, you can plug those into the Kali Pi or Raspberry Pi running Kali, and just log in as root. The default password is TOOR, which is root backwards on this flavor of Kali Linux and many others, I might add. And then you can go ahead and just bring up a shell, a command line, and just type ifconfig, and that will show you the IP address. But if you don't have a monitor, like I don't, to that thing right now, just doing a scan and then before and after and comparing and seeing what's new, that's the device. All right, let's go back to our scan. It's been close to a minute and a half. I'm looking down, the little green LED is still going. Okay, it just stopped. So I think it's had enough time. I'm going to go ahead and do the scan again, and we'll see what's new. again, we're just not going to stop the camera here. I'm just going to show you from soup to dessert. That way you can see the whole thing being done. I did a lot of the rehearsal and practice, making sure it would work consistently before the show. So hopefully it'll save you lots of time. All right, so there's the scan. I'm also going to do a sort. Oh, I should have done a sort before I took a picture on the other one. So I'm going to sort by IP here. I should have taken a sort before I did the capture, but that's okay. So let's take a look and see what's new. I've got 219. Yeah, I should have sorted them. Let's see here, 220, 234. Okay, I'm looking at this list. 234 was not here before, and if I look at 234, that B8 address, that's the first 2 characters of its MAC address. That's the Kali Linux box. I've seen it because I practiced this a few times. So that's the MAC address we're looking for, and its IP address is 234. Key point here, write it down, at least for me, 192.168.1.234. If you write it down somewhere, when you come back, you'll say, oh, what was that address again? That's it. So I'm going to go ahead and close Angry Scanner, and let's open up Putty. So Putty, as I open that up, here's where you can get Putty, putty.org, https. And they've got links for downloads for Putty, which is also very, very free. And we'll go back to my Putty window. So in Putty, we just put in the IP address of, right, 192.168.1.234. And we're going to connect on SSH, which is TCP port 22. And we're also, I'm going to go ahead and create a new session for this called, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take an existing Kali Pi I already have from earlier. I'm going to load it, and then I'll just update the address. Oh, same address. Fair enough. So I'm going to save that because the font's a little bit bigger. I just changed the settings in Putty just a little bit for visibility so we could all read it better. So once that's saved, I'm going to just go ahead and click on, I can either double click on it or click on open. Oh, great warning. This is saying, hey, you haven't connected here before. It's got a set of SSH keys that's being used for SSH. Do you want to go ahead and accept it and cache those? I'm going to say yes. And it's really important if you're using this in a production environment somewhere outside your home, that you would want to change the SSH keys and change the default password, because those defaults, because everybody knows them, makes it very insecure by default. So separate video on that for changing the SSH keys and the password. For now, we're going to log on as root, and the password is root backwards, which is TOOR. Boom. There we go. So we are logged in. If we do an IF config, there's our IP address on the Ethernet interface right here, 192.168.1.234. So we could also take additional steps and hard code that and do other options, but our goal here is to not only apply an image for Kali Linux on this Kali Pi, but also get remote access to it with a GUI, not just CLI. CLI is great, fantastic. However, for something in CCNA, and especially if you want to run something like Wireshark, you want to take this Kali Pi and you want to place it anywhere in your network to watch the traffic between 2 links with a Wireshark, a packet capture. We want to make sure that we can visually see that. And there's a few options of doing it. I'm going to share with you one using VNC here in a moment. Okay, so let me check my list here. I have a list, which I will put all in the description for this video. All right, the gear I'm using, I have a Samsung 32 gig micro SD card. I'm using this image of Kali Linux. We talked about that. The Boolean etcher to supply the image, we did that. And Angry IP, we did that. And Putty, we did that. And then VNC, we're going to use here in a moment so we can remotely connect to the desktop of this Kali Linux device. So to do that, we're going to do a couple things. And the first is we are going to do an apt-get update and ampersand apt-get install -y x11 VNC. This is going to update the Kali Linux, and it's going to install the application x11 VNC, which is the component that allows us to connect with the graphical user interface over it. Now, there are several different flavors. Let me just tell you. There are several different flavors of VNC that we can implement on a Raspberry Pi, and there's lots of options and tweaks and tuning that we can do for it. All fine and good. I can tell you this. There are probably dozens and dozens of combinations that do not work. And what I was hoping for and what I worked out was one set of solutions that do work. And that's what I'm going to walk you through right now, is how you can make it work. So follow these instructions and you'll be good to go. So going back to our desktop, I'm going to right click on this. And you can just do this from the description, by the way, in the video just down below. I'll put all these commands so you'll have them. Copy, and then at the command line, paste. Same exact command, enter. And what it's going to do is going to ask us in about probably a minute. It's going to ask us to restart some service and continue. And so we need to be present and wait for that so we can finish the install of the VNC X11 software. All right, let's see what else is on our list while that cranks away. We'll come back here in just a moment and we'll check on it. So we just did this command and highlighted. Then we're going to do a shutdown -R now. What that says is I want to reboot the machine in a graceful way, not just pull the power. Please avoid pulling the power on your Kali Linux if it's running, or any Linux device or appliance for that matter, because if you do that, the file system may not have integrity because you cut it right in the middle of something. So shutdown -R now simply says I want to reboot this Kali Linux now. Does a graceful shutdown, does a reboot, and then we can continue on. Then we're going to use Nano. Nano is an editor inside of Linux. If you want to use VI, more power to you. If you don't know what VI is, that's okay too. VI is how our grandfathers and some people today who really like navigating the CLI use a text editor. So in this config.txt file, we need to modify just 2 parameters. I'll walk you through those because if you don't, your screen's gonna be like this big. Oh, Raspberry Pi. and I like a bigger screen. I like something I could actually see when I'm working with, especially with Wireshark or packet captures. I want to be able to see on my remote machine. So we're going to modify that. And then once we do that, we're going to reboot one more time. And then we're going to launch X11 VNC. We're going to specify the password for X11 VNC. And then we're going to go ahead and launch it so it runs. Also, subsequently, after we get this up and running, we can go through the process of automating this so that it doesn't have to be a manual process every time you want to start it. But for now, I thought, how much can we put into the one video about getting up and running, and we'll fine-tune and do automation in subsequent training. All right, so this guy is hopefully almost done. Do. All right, well, so while that's going, how are you? It's good to see you. I have recently been working on some courses at CBT Nuggets for the CCNP level content, including Encore, which is done, and NRC. Well, everybody asks, when's the Encore going to be out? It's going to be released when it's finally going to be released. But so stay tuned for CBT for that. And also, I'm currently working on in ARSI, NRC. It is April of 2020, and that should be done fairly soon as well. And then I'll be on to some more security stuff at the NP level. So also, if you're studying for CCNA, while we're waiting for this to complete, if you're studying for CCNA, I hope you have some resource such as a book or an official study material, some videos that you've purchased, or you're going through step-by-step that cover everything. This channel is intended for augmenting and assisting to help your understanding with many of the topics of CCNA. So it's not an end-all, be-all, just watch Keith's videos, you'll be set. It's whatever studying material you're using, check out the master playlist here on the channel to help reinforce most of those concepts. And also I have a boatload of packet tracer labs to also help reinforce it. So going back to our screen, this is the SSH session still. We'll go ahead and click here to put the window, focus in this window. I'm going to go ahead and use the left arrow key to go to yes to restart services during package upgrades without asking. Press enter, and it's on its way. So once this is done, what we'll do is we'll then reboot it. And I have an edit. Let's check our notes. Boy, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to do this so many times and have it not work using various flavors of VNC, including various clients and then various parameters, and like, oh, that doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and that doesn't work. So hopefully my goal is to save you a bit of time. Also, I'll timestamp these two. I'll put timestamps for this part, that part later in the video so that when you go down to the description, if you're looking at this after the fact, it'll have those timestamps and you go right to the parts that you want. So we're doing this upgrade still, and then we're going to go ahead and do a shutdown -R. Oh, there we go. So let's do that. I'm just going to right click, copy, go back to my CLI, my SSH session, and shutdown -R now. And I lost my connection because I just killed the server, no problem, or killed the Kali Pi, and we'll just open it back up. So we'll go back to Putty. I'll click on Kali Pi. I'm going to load that just to make sure it's the right address. Also, the cool thing is that this could be somewhere further away in the network too. It happens to be right next to me, but you could do this headless install or headless configuration for VNC access as long as you have IP reachability to it. So VNC is a great, it's a well-known remote access protocol. So it's like sitting at our main computer and running the VNC client and actually getting a remote desktop out to the Raspberry Pi running Kali Linux. So that way you can sit at your computer and still have a window with VNC running that gives you the desktop of the Kali Linux. It's pretty cool. All right, so the little green light has slowed down, which means I think it's done rebooting. I'll go ahead and double click on Kali Pi, going to the correct address. Fantastic. We'll log in again as root. I haven't changed the password yet, so it's still TOOR. All right, so our next step is to go ahead and edit the /boot/config.txt file. So I'm going to copy that, which I'd recommend do also from the description down below the video. Do that. Also, if you're putting it into a text editor, sometimes if there's dashes involved, sometimes text editors do crafty things with dashes. So if you're going to copy paste directly from the video, you might want to put it in a text editor first, like Notepad or something very, very simple, so it doesn't add any extra hyphenations or anything interesting like that. So we're going to edit. There's the file. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down and we're just going to take out 2 of these pound symbols, 2 of these hashtags. And I just need to find them. They're regarding frame size. Oh, frame buffer. Here we go. These 2 right here. So frame buffer underscore width equals 1280. And the next one, I'm going to go ahead and delete the pound sign in front of that. Those pound signs mean their comments are remarked out. So with that done, double checking my work here, I'm going to do a Control X, and to get out, Control X, and then it says save modified buffer. I'm going to hit Y for yes, and it's confirming. Do you want to write this file to boot/config.txt? Yes, just press enter, and it's done. So we could also do a more of that file. Just to verify that our changes got done. So you hit Q if you want to stop the scrolling. So I just want to make sure those parameters are there. And then I'm going to reboot one more time. Yeah, I'm going to reboot one more time just to be safe, because that's how I tested it. So to do that, it's simply a shutdown, -R for reboot, and don't wait, do it now. All right, so it's rebooting. Now that it's rebooting, once it comes back, we'll go ahead and issue these 2 final commands. One is to store the password or set the password for the VNC, the remote connection that we'll need when we use a client to connect to it. And then the other one actually launches the VNC daemon to sit there, run, and listen for our connections. So I believe the default port for VNC is 5900. At least that's what I'm setting it to here. And if you have if you're using something other than port 5900, you'd want to tell your VNC client to use that alternate port. Also, while we do that, let me show you the client I'm using. So any VNC client almost would be great. I found a small one. It's called TightVNC. I'll put that link in the description below as well. And it's just very, very small. So you can run the actual VNC client from the official makers of VNC. I find this one just a little bit smaller, less, and any VNC client you want to use is great. So I'm going to use TightVNC for this demonstration because that's what I used in testing. And let's go back to the CLI. So this is no longer, see how it says inactive there in Putty? You can right click on the top bar here, and if we say restart session, it just reconnects, saves us a few moments, and then we'll log in as root, and the password is TOOR, hasn't changed, and we are back, and let's go back to our Notepad document. All right, so here we're going to run this bad boy, x11vnc space dash store password with no space after that dash. At least I'm not using one. And press enter. And I'm just going to put a password in that I can remember. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Confirm the password. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll have other videos on automating this. When it automatically boots up, it'll all be ready to go. I just wanted to keep this video as short as possible to get you up and running. Write the password to that file. Yes, please. Put a Y there. And then we're going to go ahead and launch the service, which is this beautiful string right here. Hey, Keith, can you explain? When I was going through the varied options for this service, there's a lot of them, and they're not all the same. This one works on this image of Kali Pi, and so I decided this is what I want to share with you. And it's not as important to memorize each parameter unless you're trying to troubleshoot or fine-tune something. So I'm using this exact string. I'm going to copy that, go down to my Kali Pi, right-click, and it wrapped that around. Let me just scroll this out a little bit. Just want to make sure you know it's not on two different lines. There you go. It's just one line of text, and enter. And away it goes. It has some messages, and it's doing its magic in the background. It's listening on port 5900. Fantastic. Let's open up TinyVNC. I'm not sure, excuse me, TightVNC, which is right here. TightVNC, and the IP address was 234. I have 234 already cached because that's what it has the same address. My DHCP server assigned the same address as 4 or 5 times earlier today. So I'm going to simply use that. The default port is 5900, so I don't need to put : 5902 or anything else because it's using the default port. And I'll click on connect. The password is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Also, if it gives you a warning here saying, hey, this is an insecure connection. Yeah, we didn't set up any kind of encryption or protection on it. So I told it to stop telling me that. But if it tells you that, you're just connecting to your Raspberry Pi at that IP address with this password. Click OK. And bada bing, bada boom. I'm going to resize this a little bit. So it's giving us that window size based on the parameters we configured. And there's a whole frame around it for controls, but let me just bring it up into, I'll give you a little, there we go. That's enough so you can see the edges too. So the default password here is root. Password is Toor, T-O-O-R. And this is effectively the remote desktop using VNC over from this computer I'm sitting at over to that Raspberry Pi, which could be anywhere that's reachable via IP. So as a quick test, and so here's the Raspberry Pi interface. If we wanted to get this guy in the wireless network, oh, my head's in the way. Get rid of him. So if we wanted to get this on the wireless network, we could click here on network connections, and we could actually set up the Wi-Fi that's built into the 3B Plus, and the 4 has it as well. We could go, if you don't see your network here, just click on more networks. It'll show you all the networks here. You can select the network, put in your Wi-Fi, the passcode, the pre-shared key to get on your Wi-Fi, and then in the future connect to it on its Wi-Fi interface as well instead of wired. That's also an option. I would recommend starting with the wired connection because you'll have more reliability, especially if you're in a dense area where lots of Wi-Fi signals are all competing, you have overlapping signals. It just removes the whole variable if you start with the local area network connection, which is what we did in this demonstration. All right, so as a last piece here to verify functionality, let me go ahead and click on this icon in the upper left-hand corner. And let's type in Wireshark as a great example. I love Wireshark. So this is a packet capture tool, and all the processing is really happening over on the Raspberry Pi. It's just that we have a remote desktop to it. So if we had a device that was plugged in, let's just, and we'll take a look at that in the next video. But I'm just going to grab Ethernet 0 because that's the only network interface I have at the moment that's really sending traffic. And we're going to see a whole bunch of VNC traffic. If we wanted to filter some of that, we could just grab one of those and right-click and say Apply as Filter, and we'll say Not Selected. And that's just a display filter. Say, hey, please don't show me the VNC traffic. That's all my VNC control traffic off of that interface. But if we did a ping, for example, let me bring up a command prompt. This is from my computer at .254 going to the IP address of the Kali Linux box at 234. I'll do a ping. And 192, I had to think about it, 168.1.234. And it's responding, no problem. If we stop the capture, and then we do a display filter for just ICMP, there's our ICMP traffic. So we can analyze it. Now the power of this is it gets pretty amazing once we go back to our CCNA lab network. If you're building one at home, or if you're at your home network, you want to see how the protocols are operating, we could connect to this Kali Linux box, and then using a few techniques, which I will share with you in the next video, we could use a device like this. Oh my gosh, this is great. This is a dual-com device. In the next video, when we talk about how to do inline packet sniffing just by removing one cable and plugging in one cable, these two ports here are the monitoring ports. Any traffic that goes from one device to the next, it could be between two switches or a router and a switch or to a client. All the traffic that goes between these two ports will be replicated out this port, like switch port analyzer on a Cisco switch. But the cool thing is you take your Raspberry Pi and you just plug an Ethernet interface in here, which we could do with an extra Ethernet interface dongle, which I'll show you, or we could connect to the Raspberry Pi via Wi-Fi and then allow the Ethernet port to plug into here, run packet capture with Wireshark, and guess what? We're looking at all the traffic. So that's like it's a less than $100 solution for this. And again, this is just for a CCNA lab environment for practicing. And then we have this device, which is like, it's this passive. That one's powered. This is like $12, I think, which we can also use to eavesdrop or get in line with traffic if we want to, without having to spoof anybody. We just get in line. The higher speeds that are supported, like gigabit, those are going to be more expensive devices. So that is one thing to consider as well. And oh, one other thing, check this out. With this device right here, we can use on the router I have in the other room. I keep them 2 rooms away because of the noise. It's a Cisco router. It's got a USB port on it. And that USB port didn't have a lot of uses for me until I realized I could take the Kali Linux device, and I could power that via the USB port on the actual router. And then I can use a USB port on the Kali Linux box, and I can further power the USB port here on this port monitor, this eavesdropping tool, and I don't have to have any power. I can take those 2 little devices, well, he's plugged in there, and I can just simply set them next to the gear I want to monitor, move a couple cables, and boom, now I've got eavesdropping capability for all the traffic going back and forth. So if you've ever wondered, hey, what does it look like with 802.1q? What do those tags look like? You can see it. What do CDP messages look like on the wire? You can see it. What does the ARP request and response look like? You can see it. How about DHCP? You can see it. How about what the multicast address used for OSPF as they form neighborships? You can see it. It's so cool. So in the next video, what I'll do is I will walk you through taking this existing Raspberry Pi, which is now a Kali Pi, that's what I'm calling it, that has Kali Linux on it, and now we have remote desktop capabilities to it, and we'll extend it further by adding a device like this, which is about $100 for this device, and or this, which is like $12. And I'll also show you options for adding another Ethernet port, which isn't very expensive. And one other thing I want to mention was, oh, and the Raspberry Pi itself, this is a 3B plus. Now they have the 4 out, and they are all moderately priced. You don't need all the bells and whistles and the heat sinks and the cases. The basic Raspberry Pi sells somewhere in the range of $35 to $65. And then the memory card that you'll need for that Raspberry Pi is the hard drive. That'll cost a few dollars, but it's pretty affordable if you want a mobile package like the Raspberry Pi, now called the Kali, in our case, the Kali Pi, which you can just bring up to your gear, switch a few cables, and then remotely analyze in real time with a protocol analyzer like Wireshark and see exactly what's happening. Now, in addition to that, I want to mention that there's a whole nother world of opportunity for the other tools involved in Kali Linux, like attack tools and things like spoofing, or not, yeah, we can do spoofing, MAC spoofing, we can do layer 3 spoofing, we can do eavesdropping, we can do man-in-the-middle attacks. What's another one of my favorites? We can do denial of service attacks right from that little Kali Linux box. We can do 802.1q messages, and we can actually join, if we have a trunk that we're looking at, we could actually join any VLAN we want, unless the administrator has taken the proper precautions to avoid that. We can modify spanning tree with it. Just the list goes on and on and on. So we'll cover a few more of those at the CCNA level to get you going. But I'm so glad you joined me in this video where we took a look at how to get the software, the images, how to burn those images on an SD card, how to get that SD card and that hard drive in the Kali Linux box, and then tweak it just a little bit to get remote access using VNC. And so everything I showed you in this video, including the flashing of the drive and the exact configurations, work. So it's fantastic. So if you follow these exact steps, you'll be in great shape. I also will put all those steps in the descriptions below, and I'll also add timestamps as well. So if you look at the video, I'll have timestamps of this software, that software, how to do this. So in retrospect, you can go back and say, okay, what was that again? You go right to those links and make it easy. I'll have those up in the descriptions within a day or two. All right, so that's it. Happy studies with your CCNA. Our focus in this channel, the Keith Barker channel, is on the technologies and the aspects of Cisco CCNA 200-301. The Kali Pi, the Raspberry Pi running Kali Linux, can be a great addition if you have a physical network. Also, just in setting it up, we've had a rehearsal of several protocols, including DHCP and also SSH and a few other protocols that are very core to CCNA knowledge. So thanks again for joining me. I'll see you in the next live event. Also, after each premiere of videos, we also have in the Discord server, we often meet for a voice chat. If you'd like to join us for that, please feel free to do so. And I'd like to thank the moderators and the admins on the Discord server for doing all that terrific work for their fellow man and fellow women, and helping people get better and better at the technologies in CCNA. All right. I think that's everything I had on my list for today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next live event. Bye for now.